Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this episode, I would like to share some experience and thoughts on renting an apartment in New York, particularly how it is different from renting an apartment in Toronto. As I just moved into a new apartment here, I start to reflect on the whole process. And it occurred to me that I was quite shocked by the very different rules and process when I need to rent my very first apartment here. Before I moved to New York, I did some research online and I asked my friend what I need to pay attention to when I selected the apartment. And the very first rule they told me is that your annual income needs to be more than 40 times of your monthly rent. For example, if your annual income is 120,000, then your monthly rent cannot be more than 3,000. So this rule basically set the cap of how much rent I can pay for. This rule never exists in Toronto, because in Toronto, you just need to show to your landlord that you have the source of income, that you have your bank statement to prove that you can pay for your rent. There's never a very quantitative rule there. And then I start to search for the apartment based on this rule. I use an app called StreetEasy. So there's a filter in that app which is called no fee, which brings to the second difference in the rental market. In New York, it is not uncommon that the tenant needs to pay for the agent fee as well. So for some rental unit, they do not require the tenant to pay for the agent fee, but for some, they do ask the tenant to pay for the agent fee. This is very different from Toronto, because in Toronto market, it's always the landlord to pay for the agent fee, and then the agent fee will be split between the tenant and the landlord's agent. So once I select the apartment that I want to rent, I start to sign the contract with the landlord. And then I noticed that the document for the lease agreement is not quite standard here in New York. My first apartment, the lease agreement has more than 50 pages. There are all kinds of terms and declaration forms in it, while my second apartment has only like 10-15 pages there. Well, in Toronto, the agreement and the documents are pretty standard. You won't expect more than like 15 pages in the agreement that you need to sign. And then once I submit the application form to the landlord, I thought everything is done, but it's actually not. The application I made is not only to the landlord, but also to the building itself. So even though I signed the agreement with the landlord, I still need to submit an application to the building management. And then the building management need to review my application, and it could take them as long as like a month for them to make a decision whether to accept me as a tenant or not. Now coming to the payment part. So in New York, there is a lot of upfront payment. For example, when I submit the application to the building management, I need to pay several $100s of the application fee. And then for the landlord, I need to pay for, let's say, last month rent prepayment, the security deposit, and all kinds of fees. So even before I move into the unit, I have already paid all kinds of fees and deposit upfront. Well, in Toronto, there are not that much fees involved. Usually, the landlord will require a security deposit or like an upfront payment of the last month's rent, but that's it. The building management will not charge for any fees for applications or move-in fees. So that's about the application process. Now coming to the condo itself. So in New York, there are several aspects that are considered as the positive elements or positive feature for the unit. For example, if you have washer and dryer in unit or in the building, or like if you have concierge for the building, or that if you have elevator in the building, you have dishwasher in your unit. All these are considered as the positive feature for the unit. While in Toronto, these are actually mandatory for the unit. Like every unit will be equipped with dishwasher, washer, dryers, and almost 90% of the condos will have concierge. It's like by default setup. So these are very different apartment features when it comes to. So these are very different apartment features in Toronto and New York. Now, let me give you a quick walkthrough about my apartment in Toronto and in New York. They are basically the same rent before COVID, and you can see that how different the conditions are. If you enjoyed this episode, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.